Welcome to Mindset in Stone podcasts, where we dive deep into the most compelling books on the shelf. Join hosts Dave and Poppy as they uncover the stories, themes, and ideas that shape our understanding and inspire curiosity. Get ready to explore the big ideas that leave a lasting impact. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Mindset in Stone podcast. This is the deep dive where we really aim to strip away all the noise, the distraction, and, the historical clutter to get straight to the ancient wisdom that can actually make a difference in your modern life.
And today we are opening up a treasure trove of truly timeless advice. Advice that wasn't delivered from some distant academic podium, but from one busy Roman Lucius Annaeus Seneca to another, his friend and fellow civil servant, Lucilius.
That's right. Our subject is the towering figure of Lucius Annaeus Seneca. He was a Stoic philosopher, a celebrated playwright, and pretty controversially, the chief political advisor to Emperor Nero.
Maybe the most infamous student-turned-tyrant in all of history.
Exactly. And Seneca is just a figure steeped in paradox.
Absolutely. I mean, here's a man writing so eloquently about simplicity, about avoiding luxury, and yet historical accounts suggest his personal wealth was just staggering.
We're talking multiple times that of a modern multimillionaire. And it was accumulated, in part, through some very shrewd political moves and his proximity to absolute power.
It's the ultimate Stoic contradiction, really. It's something we can't ignore.
We can't, but we also won't let it distract us from the profound utility of his philosophy, because our source material today, the Epistulae Moralis, the moral letters to Lucilius Jr., is just the gold standard of practical self-improvement.
And the context for these letters is everything. You have to remember, Lucilius wasn't some cloistered intellectual. He was a hardworking, high-level imperial procurator down in Sicily.
So he was in the thick of it.
Totally in the thick of it, juggling huge administrative demands with this personal desire for wisdom. So these letters are Seneca's guide to balancing that philosophical ambition with a relentless, active life.
Which makes them arguably the perfect roadmap for you, the busy modern learner. So our mission today is clear. We're going to move past the history, past the controversy, to extract Seneca's core roadmap for inner resilience.
We're looking for those immediate actionable principles, the ones that fortify the mind and grant what Seneca called inner freedom, regardless of whether fortune is, handing you a palace or an arrest warrant.
Before we jump into the letters themselves, let's just frame Seneca for a moment. He was born in Cordoba, in Roman Spain, son of a very strict, very respected authority on rhetoric.
But what really defined his early life, maybe more than anything, was his physical suffering.
His health.
His health. He had this chronic, debilitating illness, specifically severe asthma. And he described the attacks so vividly, he called them rehearsing death.
Just fighting for breath.
Fighting for every breath until he was just exhausted and basically resigned himself to the end. And this constant closeness to mortality, this personal fragility, it profoundly influenced his stoicism.
You can see how it would.
Of course. He embraced the core idea, living in accordance with nature. And for him, that meant developing this divine spark of reason inside us to conquer all the destructive forces: grief, superstition, pain, and especially the fear of death. The goal is to perfect that rational part of you.
But here's the key insight, I think, the thing that makes Seneca so accessible to us now.
Go on.
Well, early Stoicism was often very rigid, wasn't it? It focused on the sapiens, the perfect wise man, this almost mythical, unreachable figure who's achieved complete moral perfection.
Precisely. And Seneca recognized that aiming for some impossible ideal is just demotivating. So he modified the philosophy. He shifted the focus to attainable goals through gradual self-improvement.
He focused on the striver.
The person making daily tangible progress. He even admitted his own failings. He tells Lucilius in one letter that he himself had many things that required to be built up or fined down or eliminated. It makes his advice so much more practical. It's about a daily process of refinement, not waiting for some sudden, impossible transformation into a perfect marble statue.
Okay, let's unpack this roadmap then. Our first major section is all about building that inner citadel, achieving real focus and self-mastery. And we have to start with Seneca's diagnosis of the most common mental illness of his day.
He calls it the restlessness of a hunted mind. And he observes that people, and he means Roman society, but it applies perfectly today, are constantly moving. They can't just stop and pass time in their own company.
It's not a love of travel, he says. It's a symptom of a sick mind.
It is. I see the parallel immediately. He was describing the person who can't sit still, always needing a new place, a new party, a new distraction.
And today, Well, today he would describe the person who can't stop scrolling,
Hmm.
always moving to the next subject, the next outrage, the next tiny fleeting bit of information.
His analogies here are so visceral, so memorable. He warns against just superficially reading a ton of authors. He says food that is vomited up as soon as it's eaten does the body no good.
You're just gorging yourself on information you can't possibly use.
Exactly. And he extends it beyond books. A plant that's moved all the time never grows strong roots. A wound that's subjected to frequent changes of treatment will never heal.
This instability of the mind prevents healing, and it prevents growth. He says it so clearly in letter 2, to be everywhere is to be nowhere.
So the prescription is to extend your stay, to stick with writers whose genius is unquestionable and just derive lasting nourishment from them. It's about depth, not breadth.
This overwhelming push for depth and consistency brings us right to our first and I think highly relevant practical takeaway, especially for us dealing with constant information overload.
Right. PT1, focus the mind on assimilation. And you can think of it as a reading strategy.
It is. The rule is simple. Stop reading a multitude of books, stop skimming a multitude of feeds. Only consume what you are truly able to digest and assimilate on a deep level.
And he refines this into a daily habit. He tells us to acquire something every day, some nugget of wisdom, some principle that will actually help you face the tough realities, whether that's poverty or, death.
Pick out one single thought, he says, to be digested thoroughly that day.
And what's great is that this thought doesn't even have to come from your favorite Stoic. Seneca, showing some real intellectual humility here, often quotes from The Enemy's Camp. He'll cite Epicurus to drive a point home.
Yeah, he famously quotes Epicurus, "A cheerful poverty is an honorable state."
And then Seneca adds his own spin, saying if it's cheerful, it's not poverty at all. But the value isn't just in the maxim, it's in the thorough digestion and application of that single idea throughout your day.
This connects directly to his idea of sufficiency, right? Natural desires, food, water, shelter, they're limited. They're easy to satisfy.
But the desires that spring from false opinions, from what everyone else is doing, that relentless craving for more, those are limitless. And they always, always lead to more anxiety and more thirst.
So once we start to focus that inner life, the next challenge Seneca addresses is our outward perception, that impulse so many of us have to, advertise our self-improvement.
Spiritual vanity. He warns so strongly against this kind of calculated action that's just meant to draw attention. In letter V, he explicitly tells Lucilius to stop seeking comments on his appearance or his lifestyle.
And he gets very specific. He says, avoid going around in shabby, dirty clothes. Avoid cultivating long, unkempt hair or making a big show of sleeping on the ground.
He sees all of that as just misguided self-advertisement. It's not genuine self-improvement.
And this is where he shows his strategic depth. He says, look, the very name of philosophy is already unpopular enough in Roman society.
So if we start dissociating ourselves too much from convention through this kind of aesthetic posturing, we don't achieve anything. We just alienate the very people we might someday hope to influence.
He's basically saying, don't be weird just to prove a point. If you look utterly miserable while claiming to be happy, why on earth would anyone want to follow your path? It pushes people away.
Exactly. The goal is to live a life that is demonstrably better than the mob's, not one that is simply the opposite of theirs.
Okay, so that brings us to our third practical takeaway. And this one requires a real understanding of strategy and influence.
PT3. Conform outwardly. Challenge inwardly. That's the principle. Inwardly, everything should be different. Your motivations, your judgments, your fears, but your outward face should conform with the crowd.
Your clothes shouldn't be gaudy, but they shouldn't be ostentatiously shabby either.
It's the difference between true virtue and just posturing. You aim for a way of life that is better than the chaos around you, and you subtly demonstrate its power, rather than shouting about your superiority from the sidelines.
And this flows right into the concept of ownership. Seneca is so critical of people who treat philosophy as a purely intellectual game. Collecting maxims but never embodying them.
Oh, he despises it. He hates those who just rely on collecting philosophical gems in a notebook. He says it's a disgrace for a grown, striving man to be dependent on his memory or his notes alone.
He asks that really pointed question, how much longer are you going to be a pupil?
Which speaks to that crucial process of self-correction. Seneca insists that perceiving your own faults, that's the ultimate evidence of a change for the better.
It's the first step to salvation. Acknowledging you're sick before you can even look for a cure.
And he argues that the path to virtue is short and effectual when it's pursued through personal example. He says Zeno, Plato, all of them gained far more from the character of their teachers like Socrates than from just their words.
And it's a two-way street, he says. Men learn as they teach. The act of sharing wisdom reinforces it in your own mind.
Which means we have to move past being passive consumers of wisdom and into being active creators. This gives us our fourth principle.
Let's hear it.
PT4. Own your wisdom, action versus words. The ultimate challenge Seneca gives us is to stop being mere pupils who just memorize and quote others. The goal is to become creators of your own principles.
So when you quote someone great, you have to challenge yourself. Ask. Zeno said this. But what have you said? What have you generated from your own tested experience?
Put the preaching into practice. Let your words become works. If your wisdom only lives in a notebook, it isn't really yours.
That demands a ton of honesty and the courage to admit your own ongoing struggles.
For sure. If you're going to talk about courage, you have to demonstrate courage. If you talk about simplicity, you have to actually simplify your life. It's the only way to earn the right to share the wisdom.
Okay, so we've established how to refine the inner life through focus and ownership. Let's shift gears now into section 2, where Seneca prepares us for the harsh realities of life through deliberate practice. And we have to start with the great paradox of his life, wealth.
Right. The problem of desire, as Seneca sees it, is fundamental. Natural desires, they're easily satisfied. A meal, water, a roof over your head.
But the desires that come from false opinions, from what he calls falsity, those are limitless. The pursuit of wealth, according to what everyone else thinks, that will never make you rich.
Because no matter how far fortune carries you, even if you have a roof of gold, all it does is create a craving for bigger, shinier things. Falsity has no end point.
So we have to address the elephant in the room. Seneca himself, despite saying all this, was astonishingly wealthy. How do we take his advice on simplicity seriously?
That is the core difficulty, isn't it? When Seneca talks about simplicity, the critics just scream hypocrisy.
Was this a real exercise in resilience for him, or was it just an intellectual game for a man who knew he could always retreat back to his comforts?
Well, Seneca would argue, and we have to try and understand his position here, that philosophy is not about renouncing wealth. It's about renouncing the fear of losing it.
Okay. So his solution isn't permanent asceticism.
No, it's a prophylactic. It's a preventative measure against the tyranny of circumstance. The idea is that true wealth is internal, the ability to be content no matter what's happening outside.
Which is why he calls for cultivating a relationship with poverty.
And this gives us our fantastic, really concrete action item. This is Stoicism in practice.
PT2. Practice poverty, resilience. The action is very specific. Set aside a number of days now and then. He suggests maybe 4 or 5 for the plainest of food. Think barley porridge or a crust of bread and water, and wear rough, coarse clothing.
And during these voluntary periods of hardship, he challenges you to ask yourself, is this what I used to be afraid of? This is it.
The outcome is a profound conviction. By proving to yourself that you can live happily without all the riches, you fortify your spirit against whatever fortune throws at you.
If you can happily endure self-imposed prison rations, that ability is homegrown. It's yours. And it can't be taken away by some unjust stroke of fortune or political chaos.
It's an act of what he calls spiritual greatness, to forestall the blows of fortune this way.
You deny fortune its favorite weapons, the element of surprise and the power of fear.
And building on that, Seneca moves from preparing for economic uncertainty to anticipating far worse things, the inevitability of change, loss, and death itself.
Yes, the premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of misfortune. He connects fear directly to the unexpected. He writes about this terrible fire that destroyed the city of Leon, and he observes that what is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect.
Unexpectedness adds this crippling weight to any disaster.
And misfortune often chooses some new, unprecedented way of showing its power. A political coup, a natural disaster, a sudden illness. If you haven't thought about it, it hits you twice as hard.
This is where we have to connect his philosophy back to his own life again. His asthma. He was daily rehearsing death.
He was forced to meditate on the worst-case scenario just by trying to draw his next breath. And that personal experience absolutely informs his most powerful, resilient strategy.
So let's define it. PT7. Premeditate misfortune, anticipating change.
The practice is simple, but it takes immense moral courage. You have to project your thoughts ahead at every turn and just envisage every conceivable possibility. Exile, physical torture, the ruin of your reputation, war, shipwreck, the loss of people you love.
The point isn't to wallow in misery.
Not at all. The point is emotional preparation. We should be anticipating not just what commonly happens, but everything that is conceivably capable of happening to a human being.
The payoff is that nothing can take you completely by surprise. Seneca reminds us we are born unequal in status and wealth, but we all die equal.
And this kind of preparation allows us to be ready for everything. We can bear up bravely under whatever fortune sends our way.
This whole practice is really rooted in understanding mortality, and Seneca offers a profound comfort about death itself. He says it's just not being. It's the same state you were in before you were born.
He uses this beautiful, simple analogy. He asks if anyone would say a lamp is worse off when it's put out than it was before it was lit.
No, of course not.
He says we are lit and we are put out. In between we suffer. But at either end, before birth and after death, there's just a deep tranquility. The fear is irrational because being dead is a state of peaceful non-existence.
And what about physical pain? Often that's feared more than non-existence.
He has the great Stoic assurance for that. Nature has so arranged things as to make pain either bearable or brief.
Meaning?
When pain is at its most severe, that intensity can't be sustained. The body can't handle it. It finds a way to end it, either through unconsciousness or actual death. No one can be in acute, soul-shredding pain and feel it for long.
And he also points out that the wise man escapes necessity because he wills what necessity is going to force on him.
Right. If you're being thrown out of life, the wise man acts as if he's merely going out willingly. He denies fate the satisfaction of making him a reluctant victim.
The mental strength to endure all this, he argues, is like the training boxers go through. They bear immense suffering for a simple wreath. We have to endure for moral worth, for a peace that's won forever once fortune is defeated.
Which brings us to section 3. Navigating the external world, the chaos of people, noise, and useless activity that undermines all our hard-won inner peace.
Seneca is so aware of the moral danger of the mob. He warns Lucilius that when a mind is impressionable, when it doesn't have a firm grip on what's right, it has to be rescued from the crowd. It's so easy for it to go over to the majority.
And he gives that chilling, visceral example of the gladiator shows. He describes spectators just insisting that men who kill their opponent be thrown against another to be killed in turn. The crowd is just yelling, "Kill him, flog him, burn him."
That exposure to cruelty, that moral contamination, that's his great fear. He says you must inevitably either hate or imitate the world. But the right thing is to shun both courses.
You can't go into the crowd without your moral fiber being weakened.
So his strategy is retreat. Retire into yourself as much as you can.
But this isn't about being a selfish hermit. Seneca himself, writing these letters, had withdrawn in order to be able to be of use to more people. But physically, yes, we have to manage the influence of the unexamined life around us.
He takes this to the extreme in letter LVI, with his famous noise experiment living over a public bathhouse. It's just a fantastic description of total chaos.
A veritable symphony of hell, he calls it. The grunting of people lifting weights, the smack of the masseur's hand, the shouting, the piercing shriek of the hair remover, a constant deafening noise.
But here's the crucial psychological leap he makes. He argues that this outer noise is actually less disruptive than our inner turmoil.
He concludes, there can be absolute bedlam without, so long as there is no commotion within, so long as fear and desire are not at loggerheads.
A person with inner chaos will complain about sounds they never even heard. The problem is internal, not external.
Which leads us to our 5th practical takeaway, which combines physical awareness with mental fortitude.
PT5. Manage the inner crowd, noise influence. So physically, retire into yourself as much as you can to minimize negative influences.
And mentally, force the mind to become self-absorbed, focused only on its own rational improvement. If we're victims of idleness, what he calls spineless inertia, we have to get busy with pursuits of the right nature.
And the ultimate right pursuit is philosophy. But then Seneca delivers this blistering critique of the traditional academic subjects, the liberal studies, arguing they just fundamentally fail to make a person free.
He is scathing. He says the only true liberal study is the pursuit of wisdom because it makes a person free. All other studies, music, history, grammar, they're unworthy if their only goal is making money or acquiring trivial knowledge.
He just dismisses them one by one. Take music. A scholar can teach you about harmony and notes. But Seneca says, I would rather you brought about some harmony in my mind.
What good is knowing musical modes if you yourself are discordant?
Or geometry. It teaches you how to measure estates. Seneca asks what use this is if it doesn't teach you how much land is enough for a contented life.
What good is being able to divide a piece of land if you can't divide it fairly with your own brother?
The ultimate point is that geometry deals with externals that you can lose. It doesn't teach you how to lose the whole lot and still keep smiling.
He says astrology is equally useless. Even if you know the star's path, you can't escape their destined motion, so what's the point?
He really warns against philosophy turning into pointless intellectual games, these little syllogisms that serve no moral function.
He says this isn't the place for fun. Philosophy's true purpose is to be counsel for the unhappy. It has to tell people how simple nature's laws are and how enjoyable life is for those who follow them, compared to the confused life of those who follow popular false ideas.
Shifting from academics to personal relationships, Seneca gives very clear guidance on noble friendships.
And he pushes back hard on the Epicurean view that you seek friendship for utility, to have someone sit by your sickbed. Seneca says that's just selfish and transactional.
True friendship, he insists, is selfless. You seek it so that you can sit by their sickbed, or that you might die for them.
Friendship is its own aim. If you're looking for anything else, it's just a business deal.
And he extends this idea of selfless regard far beyond just your peers. He talks about the treatment of slaves in letter 67.
He just utterly condemns the arrogance and inhumanity of masters who treat slaves worse than animals.
He insists on the fundamental equality of all humanity. Slaves are human beings, he says, our humble friends, our fellow slaves. He reminds us that fortune has as much power over the master as it does over them.
He asks the master to reflect. The person you call your slave traces his origin back to the same stock as you, breathes as you do, lives as you do, and dies as you do.
This realization underpins our next practical rule, and it speaks directly to modern leadership, management, just basic humanity.
PT6. Treat inferiors nobly. Humanity. The rule is so simple. Treat inferiors in the way you would like to be treated by your own superiors.
Value their character, not their job title. Character is their own choosing. Chance decides their job.
And he notes that there's a greater slavery that binds us all anyway. One person is a slave to money, another to ambition, another to fear. The most disgraceful slavery, he says, is the one that is self-imposed, our failure to master our own desires.
And finally, Seneca just dismantles the illusion that travel can cure a diseased mind, the idea that a new location will fix old problems.
He dismisses it as futile. What good has travel of itself ever been able to do anyone? Just distracts us for a little while with novelty.
It's like moving to a new apartment, hoping your bad relationship will fix itself. You just brought the same arguments and the same chaos to a new kitchen.
The core truth is inescapable. You're traveling in the company of your own emotions, followed by your troubles all the way. They aren't at your back, he says. They're on it.
The correct cure is simple. Mend your ways. Get rid of the internal burden. It's medicine, not a particular part of the world that a person needs if he's ill.
If you bring tranquility with you, any place will be tranquil. If you bring anxiety, no horizon will ever be far enough away.
So after all that, what does this all mean for us? We've journeyed through Seneca's entire roadmap, from conquering inner distraction to practicing poverty and navigating the chaos of the external world.
The coherence of it all is stunning, really. By mastering focus with PT1, we gain the mental space to practice resilience with PT2 and PT7.
And by achieving inner virtue with PT4, we earn the right to influence the external world effectively, which is PT3 and PT6. They all work together to fortify the will.
The goal isn't just to collect maxims, it's to work on your will until the desire to do good becomes a permanent, natural disposition to good. Seneca shows us that the effort of the striving student, the proficiens, is the highest human endeavor.
Okay, let's synthesize those 7 actionable habits and mindset shifts Seneca has given us. The core principles you can apply starting today.
Let's do it.
1. Focus the mind. Digest one powerful thought daily. Move beyond memorizing to deep assimilation.
2. Practice poverty. Set aside voluntary days for simple living to immunize yourself against the fear of loss.
3. Conform outwardly. Retain your influence by conforming to social norms on the outside while challenging yourself inwardly to live demonstrably better.
4. Own your wisdom. Stop being a pupil who only quotes. Strive to be a creator of your own tested principles. Let your words become works.
5. Manage the inner crowd. Force your mind to become self-absorbed in its own improvement. Recognize outer noise as nothing compared to inner turmoil.
6. Treat inferiors nobly. Value character over status. Treat others as you would want your superiors to treat you.
And 7. Premeditate misfortune. Envisage every possibility so that nothing takes you by surprise, removing fear's greatest weapon, the unexpected.
That is a powerful synthesis. And here is Seneca's, well, his mic drop moment on self-control. He suggests that the wise man, by his own dedicated efforts, achieves an immunity from fear that actually surpasses a god.
Think about that. A god is immune to misfortune through its nature, through divinity. But the wise man achieves that same immunity through his own effort, through daily conscious work. It's the ultimate declaration of self-mastery.
So the listener's challenge, then, is to realize that nothing is difficult if you follow nature, and nothing is burdensome if you approach it lightly, with mental preparation.
Go and embrace the only true freedom, the mastery of your own mind. Ask yourself daily, what is in my power to lose and what is homegrown? Fortify that inner citadel, one assimilated thought at a time.
We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and a spark of inspiration. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, and check back for more episodes as we dive into new worlds of thought, one book at a time. Until then, keep your mind set in stone and your curiosity open. This has been a Big L Riz Media podcast, where big ideas meet lasting impressions.